You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
Hi, everybody. I'm super excited. This is Talkin Shop, where we let you know what's coming up in enough time that you can add it to your pull box at your local comic shop that you love with all your heart, and you can support the creators that you love also. So today we get to talk with my good friend David Pepose about his thing that's upcoming. You know his work from Spencer and Locke, which is one of my favorites. Scouts Honor, Moon Knight, Savage Avengers, Going to the Chapel, and it's a lot of really amazing work. How have you been, man?
I've been great. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Yeah, I'm excited to catch up. Things have been nice and busy, so I can't complain. And yeah, I got some really fun stuff coming out later this year.
So you've been busy. This is still con season for a great many people, because it used to be that con season was really done like August.
Right.
Like everything was summer, and that's not true anymore. It like keeps on a rolling.
Yes.
So we've had San Diego, and you just got back from Baltimore.
Yes, and I'm
it's a lot
gearing
of
up.
travel.
Yeah, I'm gearing up for New York next month. So yeah, I'm very excited. It's always great to get to see all the readers, who have been so kind and supportive of my work, and it's great to catch up with all my fellow pros and get to meet people that I've grown up reading and now get to play in the same ballpark as them. So yeah, I'm excited. New York's my last show of the year. I have a family conflict for LA Comic Con this year, so I won't be able to attend. But yeah, I'm excited to see all the fans over at Javits just in a little less than a month.
Do you when you go to conventions, do you table? So do you have a specific table that's for you specifically, or you go with companies?
Yes, I recently signed up with the fine folks at Comic Sketch Art, so find them. I usually am kind of in a block of booths with them. So yeah, it's been really great being able to table Baltimore this weekend. We had a big block that was it was Scott Snyder and Tom King and Pete Tomasi and Gene Ha and Doc Shanner and Jeff Johns even stopped by for a little while. So it was nice. These are all people that I grew up reading. And so it was a little surreal to be tabling with such amazingly talented creators. And all it does is it inspires me to keep trying to bring my A game to make sure I'm worthy of it.
So I've always had a question about those kind of like big groupings. It's awesome to be part of a lineup of tables that have a big draw. Are there other advantages? Like, do they provide the signage so you don't have to haul it everywhere? What are the cool things about it?
They carry my books. That is the number one cool thing. I remember being in the indie trenches. I would carry 100 pounds of books in my bags. I would max out the amount that I could put in a bag without it going over. And that wasn't great on my back. It wasn't great on my body. I think that was a young man's game. So it is very nice and helpful to have my amazing reps at CSA carry my books with me. And also it's just, like I said, it's really nice to kind of be tabling with really some of the leading figures in the industry. It's really humbling. And yeah, just, I started at this as a fan first and foremost. So, that part of me, it's always very excited to be able to hang out with such amazing creators. And, maybe one of these days I'll even sort of see myself in that kind of pantheon. But until that, I'm going to be working my butt off to make sure I earn it.
I'm pretty sure that if you have like a regular series at Marvel, you get to say you made it.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's hard to wrap your mind around such things, but yes.
Yeah, definitely. No, you know, I can't say enough great things about working for Marvel. They've been very good to me, and I'm excited to you know, keep on doing more stuff with them in 2024 and beyond.
So when you were doing everything as self-published or your early work, Spencer and Locke, walk us through what it looked like when you went to convention. Like, it's a different game than if you show up and you have got banners and like big piles of books and a handler and all that stuff. Looks different, right?
Yeah, it looks different. You know, in certain ways, it's a little more contained. I remember somebody telling me early on that everything changes when you have your second book, and they were right that when it was just the Spencer and Locke booth, you know, it was very focused on one thing to sell. And that's sort of, you know, I've always tried to view my career as my goal is to turn into a Baskin Robbins. You know, I'd like to have 31 flavors. You know, something for everybody. And but at the same time, that means that, you know, you can't just be the butter pecan booth anymore. You know, you've got you sort of have to have your stuff out and let people kind of self-select. And that's what's been so cool about especially my recent work since I've jumped to Marvel is yeah, of course there's my creator-owned work, which I love, and those are my babies. But I think for a lot of strangers who may not know me, may not know my work, they do know who Moon Knight is. They do know who Darth Vader is. They do know who Hulk is, and those are the kinds of covers that start drawing eyes. And then it's a little easier to say, oh well, hey, by the way, do you like Calvin and Hobbes? You might like my book Spencer and Locke. So it's been nice. It's been a learning curve for sure. Because this is sort of the definition of a champagne problem, but there's a lot of books on my table now, and sort of figuring out how's the best way to organize all these things is still, I think, an ongoing process for me. But it's a fun challenge, and for me, the thing that hasn't changed is just I still remain very grateful to all the fans out there, and that's why I keep doing these shows. It's a real highlight for me. It's a real thrill. To have strangers come up and say, this work made me feel something. This work felt very important to me. And just to see that excitement and that enthusiasm, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. That's what keeps me writing every day. And so, yeah, you know, I started as a fan. I know what it's like to be on that side of the table. And I think that enthusiasm, it really is contagious.
So do you have a real good line for people that walk up and want you to draw things for them?
I have a T-shirt that says, sorry, I'm just the writer. And I feel like that really handles a lot of the explanation. But, you know, I maybe I need to do the Tom King thing where I just write, you know, I can say, I'll draw you a terrible sketch. And it'll just say, you know, I'm sorry. So, yeah, you heard it here first. Tom King, I'm coming for you, but just on the bad sketch front.
Think I might get this wrong, but I think it's Matt Kent that started carrying around a little mini typewriter and would
that's funny.
Type you out like a paragraph story.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, maybe I'll just write. Maybe I heard somebody else does insulting haikus, so maybe that's what I'll have to do at some point. You know, whatever's the least mental bandwidth I can do, I will provide that to our fans as an additional service. So yeah, but you know, I always kind of look at the convention thing really as on a year-to-year basis. It's figuring out this is sort of our way to kind of market test the books, and I maintain that I always feel very good about the way that the execution comes across in my work. But I think there's always marketing is something that you can kind of do retroactively, and you can really figure out, you know, what's the best way to pitch a book. You know, Going to the Chapel was, I think, a big learning curve for me back when that came out. When I wrote it, I had based it on Dog Day Afternoon and Runaway Bride, which I love those movies, but those are not movies that if you say that to a random person at a convention, they will understand where you're going at. But as I've sort of evolved the pitch, I've talked about it as Die Hard meets Wedding Crashers. And that's something that like people can kind of glom onto a little bit more. So yeah, I see all these shows as a learning opportunity, and just another way to kind of step up my game.
Mm-hmm. What's the weirdest request you've ever gotten at a convention?
Well, I don't know if it was a request, but I do remember that I think it was at Baltimore probably 4 years ago, maybe. That I remember there was a Deadpool cosplayer who they were in a scooter and they kind of parked right in front of my booth, and we'll just say that they were very in character. They were very in character for a very long time, and my fiance happened to go to the show with me that year, and she was kind of trapped behind the booth with me. And I could feel every second that this person went on that I was like, she's never coming back. She's never come back to the show. So yes, now anytime I throw out there, hey honey, you wanna come to the show with me? She's like, that's fine. Don't worry about it. So that might be the weirdest thing that's happened to me at a show. Yeah, I think that's the weirdest thing. That might be the weirdest thing. So Deadpool cosplayer, if you're listening, I'm coming for you. Yeah. Otherwise, I've been very fortunate. Everything's been.
Gotta give them a job.
Yeah. No, I gotta park them in front of if there's like a con neighbor that I don't like. Just be like, take those person's sales.
Like, here's some flyers. Go give them to people who will probably throw them on the ground. Go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that.
Because you like being handed things at convention. I have really actually adopted the whole like Tony Stark thing where I'm like, oh, I don't like being handed things.
I don't like being handed things. Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, and that's why I've thought a lot about like add-ons and things like that for shows, and you have to really figure out like what's a value add that people will really respond to. I know people like bookmarks, they like enamel pins, they like stickers, prints. People seem to like those. And then you kind of just figure out from there, like what are things that you start seeing in the trash, maybe those you don't repeat. Yeah, it's an evolution. It's an ongoing process. But it is kind of, I think for me, one of my favorite parts of the whole job.
I've got a question for you. Clearly not into the Marvel universe, but are any of your other works, do you feel like they might be in a shared universe, or they feel like they're very much could never live together?
I know they are very distinct. I mean, every once in a while, just as a storytelling exercise, I try to think of how I could connect each of these, or what would Detective Locke think of like Dorothy from the OZ. I think as far as from like a legal standpoint, I probably wouldn't, only because it turns out that a lot of these things, if you try to make them shared universes, it does make it a little harder as far as multimedia is concerned, because companies do not like to butt heads with one another over anything shared. But yeah, I mean, I think there's always a world where it could happen, and I always think that speaks to, even though the tones of my work can often shift, I do think there's a consistency in the voice, and I think also just in terms of the emotions that go into it, so I never say never, unlikely, but never say never, and certainly it's certainly something that I've definitely thought about from time to time to kill a little time. Oh yeah,
I'm sure as a writer you're always challenging yourselves for thinking about those kinds of things that are possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, it's being a writer is so much fun, and that like your daydreaming really is your job, and so I'm constantly kind of thinking about new ideas, and both in the licensed sandbox and on my own. But yeah, I know, I emailed one of the editors at Marvel just last week, where I said, hey, I don't know could I pitch you a couple of thoughts and ideas on like a thing? Sure. And they're like, sure, why not? And that was their mistake. Then I sent them like 3 pages of ideas But that's kind of like that's a lot of the thrill of the job. Is you really kind of get to follow wherever your mind wanders, as long as you have enthusiasm behind it, as long as it's something that's exciting to you, then you really can't go wrong. Because I was on a panel at Baltimore, and I think it was Ron Mars who said this, where like if you've entertained yourself, that's contagious, and chances are you'll have entertained somebody else as well along the way. And I think for me that sure beats trying to chase whatever trend is going on, because the downside about chasing trends is usually by the time you've done it, the trend's already gone. So yeah, I have a lot of fun with it, and especially I love doing my creator-owned work, but I also kind of love doing the superhero side of things. These characters are so malleable, and they've got such a nice history and legacy to them. And sometimes it's like archaeology, sometimes it's like remixing, sometimes it's just kind of finding interesting connective tissue from various corners of a shared universe. I know I got to do something very fun like that in Avengers Unlimited earlier this year. I wrote a team up with the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and finding kind of ways of overlap between those characters and their various worlds and their levels of experience. That was a really fun project that kind of really tested how well do I know the Marvel Universe. And I actually wound up learning a lot doing that, of just characters and concepts that I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that in a long time. The Sidri, for example, I hadn't thought about them, since seeing them in X-Men, and I was like, oh, I can throw them in here. So it's a dream job. Sure beats digging ditches, is what I always say.
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. All right, so we're here. We're just, I think, ahead of FOC, so people can actually get this onto their lists. Yeah. This awesome concept, which like makes my brain hurt, Devil That Wears My Face.
Yeah.
This is a great poster, by the way.
Thank you. Alex Cormack did a fantastic job. And I also want to shout out the marketing team at Madcave. Alex had drawn that amazing poster, but they were the ones that decided to put the tagline in it. And I think that really was like the ingredient that made the whole thing click. So I'm very happy with that poster.
Really cool. Really cool.
Oh, nice. Okay, I had not seen those yet. I love those.
And they sent advanced copy. This is the right way to do it, right? So that I, as a retailer, know enough to know if I have an audience for a thing, but then also to like, if I know this far in advance, then I can be already talking about it with my customers, right? I already read this book and it's super trippy.
And that's just the quiet issue. For those who aren't familiar with The Devil That Wears My Face, the way I've pitched it is it's Face Off meets The Exorcist. It's about an 18th century Vatican priest named Father Franco Vieri, and he's dealing with a really profound crisis of faith. And his superiors dispatch him to Spain to perform an exorcism on the son of a Spanish nobleman. And without spoiling too much, the exorcism backfires. And Vieri finds himself trapped in a stranger's body, while Vieri's body has been hijacked by the demon known as Legion. And so really is kind of like a fun cat and mouse. Like I said, it's if you're a fan of Face Off, if you like The Exorcist, there's a little bit of kind of Monte Cristo in there as well. Mm-hmm. It's just been a really fun book to put together. And working with Madcave Studios, with my editors, Mike Martz and Christina Harrington, who I had worked with on Scout's Honor back at Aftershock, and especially working with artist Alex Cormack, Bram Stoker Award nominee, and just I think the best horror artist of his generation. It's been
some of my favorite art of all time.
It's really it's fantastic stuff, and so it's been really nice. It's felt like a really cool jam band. With Alex and Mike and Christina and our letterer Justin Birch, and I'm very happy with how the book's been coming together so far, and the early reaction to our first issue has been really positive, really fantastic, and so I can't wait for readers to get to check this one out.
Oh yeah. Okay. So how deep dive did you do in your research of the actual demon legion? Because
boy, I did a lot of research. Honestly, like I did all I read all the verses involving legion, and we do pay those off later on in the book. But also, I did a huge deep dive in the history of the Catholic Church and the Vatican. I read up on the history of every single pope, just to kind of figure out when what period do we want to set this. We base this on the reign of Pope Clementi, who was actually blind and bedridden before his death. He did a lot of the church's business from his bedchambers, and he would have attendants read things to him. And I thought that was a really interesting way to show the church in decline. That like it's all feeling a little like a powder keg right now. You've got the church's finances are in disarray. Their political power is kind of ebbing. The Freemasons are providing kind of a counterpoint to the Catholic Church. Cholera is rising in the Roman ghetto. There's a lot going on, and that provided a really cool historical backdrop to this series. If you like books like Nottingham, for example,
oh yeah,
we definitely share a little bit of a similar flavor in terms of the setting. But whereas I think Nottingham takes kind of almost the David Fincher true crime approach, we've got kind of the hard horror to go along with our action. And so it's my first horror series. I dipped my toe in the pond a few times in some anthologies and in my found footage Hulk annual. But this was the first full length series that I had done in the horror genre. And I really hope it's not the last, because it's just been so fun getting to watch Vieri and Legion kind of play this bloody game of cat and mouse. And suffice to say, there is certainly going to be a growing body count along the way.
Oh yeah. I just have to give you mad props because there's so much that I read that I know that probably the writer did not intend it to be like this could really happen, found footage kind of feel where it's like this fits right in with history. But when it's like really disparate, like when I know what the biblical history or the history of something is, and they just like completely ignore it.
Right.
And it's just like it takes me out of the story so much that I just can't, unless they tell me total fantasy, I'm just taking random points of time, whatever. This will make it even more scary to me because it's like going, darn, this guy knows his stuff.
Yes. It certainly, as things escalate, it will be a little bit of a divergent history. But that's the thing about, especially something set in like the 1740s is, there was history, but like history can be a little malleable. There are things that are not told. There are things that are sort of covered up or shifted for the powers that be. So yeah, it's been a really interesting book to put together. Also, just in terms of figuring out kind of what was the historical context going on there, what was just the level of technology at that point, because I did not want this. I mean, I didn't want this obviously to be a modern day story because once you're doing something set in the present, cell phones and the internet really kind of can throw a wrench into a lot of body swap stories. So having it be of this time where the technology is still fairly limited, that was really cool. I think it kind of leans into the superstition of it all, and at the same time, the Vatican, especially back then, it was just as much a political body as it was a religious group, and digging into the politics of the church while Legion is infiltrating them. It provides a really kind of fun story to anchor all this on.
Does it tackle any other historical figures? Like, are there kings interacting with the church and telling them what's up?
Not in this story. The Pope is really our major historical figure through this, and then we've of course taken some liberties as far as what's called the Curia, which is basically the Pope's inner circle. We've populated that with our own characters, with sort of their own motivations and characterization. But suffice to say that like kind of the historical context of all of this, it's definitely important. It's definitely going to pay off in a very big way by the end of the series. But we really wanted to focus on Rome being kind of its own living, breathing place. And so we focus a lot on the history of it all, the landmarks, the traditions. Like I can say, like we've got like a big set piece set during the Carnival festivities. And you know, I made it a point to be like, okay, like where are some landmarks that we can kind of set some interesting things going on. And so, yeah, it's exciting. I know Alex Cormack is just doing such a fantastic job kind of bringing not just the characters, but the setting to life. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it's an understatement to say he's very, very good at drawing horror.
See if I can do a non-spoilery, really great art. Oh, here's a good one.
Yeah.
Here's a real dark image, but there's some scary stuff for you.
Yeah. Alex and I have a running total of like what our decapitation count is right now. I think we're at like 4 or 5. And he'll send like the Austin Powers meme of like, oh, that's not how you're the head of a major corporation. And I was like, that's how I know I'm working with the right guy. Is I would think this and I'd be afraid to send it, but Alex just sends it. So he's a great guy, a great collaborator. And yeah, he's not skipping out on any of the violence. I don't know if this book will read as bleaker than Spencer and Locke. It's certainly the bleakest thing I've written since then. But I can certainly say it's the most violent book I've written since then. We are certainly we're not making this like a splatterfest kind of book, but heads will roll. We're not shying away from the blood and sort of brutality of Legion and his schemes. And yeah, so it's going to add kind of a little bit of almost an action accent to this horror story.
Sounds awesome. How long is the series slated to last?
6 issues. 6 issues. They're already fully written. Alex is hard at work on the back half or third, I believe, of the series now. So yeah, we are well on track. Things are looking good for the book, and yeah, I'm very excited for people to get to read it. It's I think like it's one of my favorite creator-owned works that I've done. I think probably since the OZ, and I think it does feel personal to me in a way that I think by the time the book is over, people will understand. But it's about truth. I think self-deception is something that we all experience to some extent. That there are some things about ourselves that we don't want to face, that it's convenient for us not to face. But ultimately, that only helps in the short term. In the long term, kind of truth disinfects. And that's, I think, really the through line of this book, between Vieri grappling with his crisis of faith and the Curia not really being able to admit that this guy is not actually Vieri, that they've sort of seen him in this subservient role for so long that even they can't quite accept this like pretty striking personality change. And even just the Curia itself and what they represent. So yeah, things are going to come to a head in a big way. But I said in another interview that this strikes me as kind of like a spiritual successor to Scout's Honor. But whereas the twist in Scout's Honor we revealed at the outset, and it was very much our character Kit grappling with that twist for the rest of the series. This we're going to take our time a little bit with it. We're going to really kind of take our time pulling the thread. But when you do kind of find out what our twist is in this book for this series, I think it's going to make the whole thing read very differently in context. And so I'm very excited for our readers to do a deep dive once they've finished issue 6 to reread the book, now knowing everything they need to know.
So for everybody that's out there thinking they need to add that to their pull list, the first issue's slated for October the 4th, which puts these stuff smack dab in the middle of the spooky season, which makes perfect alignment. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Is there something else in the works that you're allowed to talk about that you want to get people also excited about?
Yeah, sure. Well, you can add my new Punisher relaunch to your pull list as well. We're relaunching that starting in November. We're introducing a brand new Legacy Punisher to the mix. So,
because I'm pretty sure that guy did.
Yes. Well, so Frank Castle is. We'll just say he has disappeared for other locales. But that said, nature abhors a vacuum. And so we've introduced a brand new Punisher. His name is Joe Garrison. He's a former S.H.I.E.L.D. Black Ops agent who was known as the Gravedigger of S.H.I.E.L.D. And Joe retired to pursue the call of family. And unfortunately for him, someone has blown up his house with his family inside of it. And Joe's record has been so heavily redacted, the police have no idea what his backstory is. And so they just say, we can't find the husband. We need to bring it in. So I've built that book, especially for our opening arc, as what if John Wick was the fugitive? Joe has to figure out who set him up and why. And also, really this through line is very much about him, kind of how he embraces this role. There are some legacies where you take the name willingly, and there are other legacies that are kind of thrust upon you. And Joe is very much in the latter category. And so, without spoiling too much, this is the through line of this arc is going to be how this turns from kind of a solo mission of avenging Joe's family and finding out the answers to those mission parameters morphing and evolving into something bigger and more long term as the new Punisher. But yeah, it's been really cool. It's been such a fun opportunity to get to do something like this. I really appreciate Marvel and Tom Brevoort kind of they had pitched me saying, hey, we'd love for you to take over the Punisher, but here's the twist: we're going to do a legacy character. And working with Tom and Marvel and our artist Dave Wachter, you might know him from Planet of the Apes or Spider-Man 2099 or Ghost Rider. It's been a really cool process of being able to really kind of figure out what qualities do you have to have in a character for them to be the Punisher. The grit, the badass attitude, the tenacity, the ruthlessness in certain ways, and also just the single-mindedness, the willingness to take a hit if it means to take out the other guy, while also figuring out, if Frank Castle zigged in a certain way, how can we zag but still kind of maintain the spirit of the Punisher? And that's why we really leaned into the gun fu elements of it all. So whereas Frank was, I think, very much a wrecking ball that there was so much focus on the hardware and the guns and the ammo. Joe, he does have guns and ammo. He's an ex-S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. And he's kind of got this very cool heightened S.H.I.E.L.D. weaponry from that. But it's also very much about the choreography. It's how he's able to kind of dart his way through a crowd with his S.H.I.E.L.D. pistols and kind of make short work of them. But also, how does he use the environment around him in sort of this cool improvisational way? And so I believe every issue of the first four, we have Joe kind of alternating between these two modes of combat. And for me, when I pitched it, I said, my goal would ultimately be to make Joe Garrison something as like, what if John Wick was the Equalizer? But
so brutal.
Yeah, but half the thrill is just you can throw him in a nightclub or an office building or a zoo or any other place, and half the fun should be, okay, we're dropping Joe into this environment. How is he going to use it to fight his way out? And so, and Dave Wachter is doing such killer work on it. It's really spectacular. It's probably one of the most beautiful books I've worked on at Marvel. Dan Brown just joined up with us, so he's been working on the colors, which also look spectacular. And I really can't say enough great things about the creative team that I'm working with on it. I know Dave, like we talked a lot about like classic Scott McDaniel Nightwing or Damian Scott Batgirl, just in the ways of how do we define a visual vocabulary for Joe. And I think Dave is doing just tremendous work. And so I can't wait for readers to get to check this one out. And yeah, we got some fun plans down the road.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it. You get to play in a, I know it's legacy, but it's also, you get to put your own spin on it.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to see.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I always say is, for these legacy characters, and I understand that they can be very polarizing, because, and I understand this as a fan first and foremost, is that you always want to have sort of an idea of what you're getting yourself into, and legacy characters kind of fly in the face of that. Like, there are certain elements of the concept that are going to stay in place, and there are certain other elements that are going to change somewhat. And our business, a lot of times, I think the readership is often trained to anticipate a story rather than necessarily be present or surprised by one. And so a legacy character, that's why I think they're often so polarizing, is you don't know what to expect. You can't know what to expect. But I think I've been very fortunate to be working with such a stacked team on this book, both artistically and editorially. They were, Tom is sort of, I've worked with him since I started at Marvel, and I trust him implicitly to know that, like, he won't let a book out if it's not ready, if it's not right. And so, Tom and I especially had a lot of conversations about this character and how do we tell it, not just in a responsible way in the year 2023, but how do we tell it in a viable way that is still true to the idea of the Punisher. My goal is I never want anybody to feel like, oh, if I'm a fan of Frank Castle, are you trying to say I'm a bad person? Quite the contrary. For me, it's sort of, the goal is, how do we kind of bring the Punisher back to his roots of the guy who was fighting for the little guy? Because I do think that theme, that message, we're hitting the Punisher's 50th anniversary. That story, it still resonates today. Everybody's thinking, how has society failed the little guy? Is society feeling kind of rigged against the little guy, that there are cracks everywhere that the little guy can fall into? And I know Jerry Conway once spoke about the Punisher being an indictment of society, that a society that generates somebody like the Punisher, there's been a failure. And I think that's the question that we've been kind of circling back to with this series, is how do you have a Punisher for the little guy? And I think we've told a story that really positions Joe to be that guy. And so it's been very exciting, and just the opportunity to add something new to the Marvel universe. I love playing with pre-existing characters because there's so much cool history. But it was a really fun assignment to be able to be like, okay, it's blue sky thinking. It's clean slate. What do you want to add to the Marvel universe? And it was a really fun challenge, and one that I've been very excited to dive into.
Well, congratulations, man. I'm super excited for everything the future holds. You keep surprising me with everything you write, and that's saying something when I've been reading for 30 years.
I appreciate that.
Feel like you can't read anything new under the sun, but yeah, you've definitely got me all the time. So
thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the support, and everybody listening to this. I really appreciate you guys being there for me, because, like I said, I'm a third generation comics fan. I'm a fan first and foremost. And I pinch myself every day that I've been able to be so lucky to write for a place like Marvel. And I attribute that to, it really took a village of readers and retailers and press who all spent a long time having my back. And it's, you're seeing it right here. So I'm very grateful. And I'm just determined to kind of keep giving my absolute A game to just show that I'm worth it.
Perfect. So everybody, make sure you add those titles to your polls if they sound interesting to you, or recommend them to a friend if they don't seem like your jam, but someone who they'd be perfect for.
Yeah.
Follow David at Pepose everywhere he is, right? They're on all your different platforms the same?
Yeah, Pepose D. I'm at Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. At that, I'm at David Pepose Comics on Facebook. And my website is davidpepose.com, and my newsletter is bit.ly/pepnews. So feel free to sign up.
I love it. You're on all the cool channels. Love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here on Talkin Shop. Go and support your LCS because they are part of the very much important universe of things that make comics accessible to every man, every girl, every kid. Definitely want them around.
Yes.
All right, everybody. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much, David.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.